Good morning, Psych students. Hope you had a good weekend and first day, 3-day weekend before we get back to e-learning. Today we're going to talk again, as I said last week, I'm going to offer feedback on the FRQs. Moving forward, that's kind of what we'll do. You'll get a new FRQ today, offer feedback from that on Friday, new FRQ on Friday, offer feedback from that following Tuesday, so on and so forth. We're looking at 3 weeks out from the P test, so hopefully you're getting ready. If you have any specific units you want me to cover and make a little video about, obviously I'll continue providing the College Board reviews. But if there's anything you specifically want to go over, have me do a little review video about it, anything like that, let me know, reach out, and I'll put something together. Okay, so we're looking today at review FRQ number 6. So, a researcher compared the effectiveness of massed versus distributed practice in preparing for a memory test. And really, when we talk about distributed practice, good vocab word to remember, the spacing effect. The idea that if you study in little blocks, kind of like what we're trying to do right here, doing a little bit at a time instead of cramming, you're more likely to remember it. So that's what this experiment is about. Spacing effect, distributed practice versus cramming. Each of the two groups memorized the definitions of 40 vocabulary words. In Group A, there were 30 participants who were all under the age of 25. That's kind of a big deal. Put a pin in that. Participants in Group A were used the method of distributed practice, studying for 30 minutes on each of 4 evenings. They were tested on the 5th morning at 7 a.m. In Group B, there were 30 participants who were all over the age of 60. Put a pin in that important detail. Participants in Group B used the method of mass practice, cramming, studying only from 6:30 to 8:30 on the evening before the test. They were tested the next morning at 7 a.m. All participants completed a recall test. Recall, I think FRQ is fill in the blank type test, a little more difficult than recognition, which is more like multiple choice. The test measured how quickly participants recalled the definitions. The results show the mean difference between the distributed practice group, spacing effect group A, and the mass practice group, cramming group B, was statistically significant. The researcher provided a list of names and test scores for each individual participant in a letter to all the participants. Put a pin in that too. Okay, so one thing just keep in mind when you're working on these types of FRQs, research methods or connections, which you'll see a couple connection type ones this week, or concept ones, is sometimes they take a while to read. Okay, so it helps maybe to I guess you can't really sub search, but get a good grasp, read it a couple times, look for all those key details. So part A, what is the operational definition of the dependent variable? So now dependent variable is what we're measuring to show the effect of the independent variable. And when we talk about operational definition, realize what are we specifically looking for? How are we measuring it? Okay, so if I was going to do an experiment, I think the example I used for semester, heat causes aggression. Well, that's all fine and good. How am I going to measure aggression? Okay, so in this case, how am I going to measure whether or not the spacing effect or distributed practice makes a difference versus mass practice or cramming? Well, the dependent variable is basically their test results, and how quickly they answer those questions is a good way of talking about the operational definition. So basically, when we're talking about operational definition, how are we defining the dependent variable? Okay, I think there's one coming up later in the week with there's one possibly coming up later with hyperactivity, and it's like, do sugar snacks influence hyperactivity? Well, you got to define hyperactivity. And so I think the researcher talks about kids getting out of their chairs. How often they get out of their chairs in class. That's their operational definition. Explain the ethical flaw. Most of you guys did really well. Like I said, this FRQ, we did a lot better on than FRQ number 5. The ethical flaw. Lots of different ethical flaws to talk about. Reviewing Unit 1, informed consent. They didn't get permission to do the experiment on people. Debriefing, didn't tell the people about it afterwards. This one, though, is confidentiality, your right to privacy. Sending the people the scores of everybody violates their right to privacy confidentiality. And how could it be corrected? Well, you could get permission for that, Or you could just, a lot of you guys had the good suggestion, just send people their own score, not the scores of everybody else. Part C, explain how the research design flaw in the study can be corrected. Well, the main flaw is that you've got 25-year-olds versus 60-year-olds. One group, the group with distributed practice is all the young people and all the old people in mass practice. So how can you fix that? Well, a couple different ways. You could use, some of you guys put in more vocab, random sampling. Okay, so have people from all age groups in each group. Okay, or have just 25-year-olds in Group A and 25-year-olds in Group B. Okay, so lots of different ways to correct that. You guys did a good job coming up with suggestions. In a well-designed study, what does it mean to say there's a statistically significant difference between the groups? This has come up on several of the review FRQs. Again, most of you guys pretty much nailed it. The results cannot be due to chance, okay, or the results are big enough and not, or the difference between the two groups is big enough and not due to chance to show that the mass practice versus distributed practice had an effect. So a lot of you guys really using that words, the results were not due to chance. Keep it up. Great job. How might each of the following concepts affect the results of the study? Fluid intelligence. Remember, you should define and apply. And this is the only issue I think we had a little bit with the last two was you skipped right to, yes, fluid intelligence declines as people get older. So the young people would have an advantage. That's all fine and good. You didn't tell me what fluid intelligence is. So our crystallized intelligence, think of it as knowledge and information. As you get older, you know more and more and more stuff. So your crystallized intelligence grows, but fluid intelligence, which is problem-solving abilities and the ability to use logic, that declines as you get older. So the idea that perhaps older people would have a harder time with this experiment with the vocab test because their fluid intelligence has declined. Circadian rhythms, again, got to define it. So we're talking about, your body's 24-hour clock, and it affects when you're energetic and awake and when you're kind of drowsy and when you're asleep. A couple different ways you could talk about this. You could talk about how the older adults had to stay up studying from 6:30 to 8:30, and maybe some of you guys talked about old people liking to go to bed really early, so that would throw off their circadian rhythms, or the fact that older people do better because they're more likely to get up at 7 or get up early. If you think about your grandparents getting up at 5 or 6 for absolutely no reason at all because they can't sleep past then, that would be a circadian rhythm issue. Or the young people struggling at that time because young people are used to sleeping past 7. So 25-year-olds who like to sleep till noon, all of a sudden they're asked to wake up at 7 and do a vocab test. Maybe they would struggle because they would not have the energy in order to do that. Okay, so that's FRQ number 6. Good luck today on FRQ number 7. Over the next couple days, we'll talk again on Friday. And like I said, if you want to reach out, let me know if there are any units or concepts that you think would be worthwhile to go over in a little video. I'm here, ready to help. Have a great Tuesday.